Boy, having stayed up all night, stumbled weakly and collapsed to the ground. Unexpectedly, at that very moment, the small plane beside him seemed to come to life. It flew into the sky in a bizarre manner and, in the blink of an eye, arrived at the boy's home, hovering outside his window. Upon seeing this scene, the boy's mother was instantly startled. Noticing that the small plane didn't seem to have any malicious intent as it lingered outside the window, Mary finally dared to slowly walk out of the house. However, she had barely taken a few steps when the small plane retreated a few steps behind her, as if intentionally guiding her to find her son. Recalling that her son hadn't come home all night, Mary suddenly realized that something was amiss. She hurriedly told her daughter to stay at home and not go out under any circumstances. Then, she got into the car and followed the small plane as it led the way. And so, following the small plane's guidance, Mary arrived at a high tower. She never expected that her own son would be lying on top of the tower. Just like that, the boy's life was saved by the small plane. However, just as Mary was about to leave with her son in her arms, an SUV suddenly arrived. It turned out that Mike, who had been tracking the small plane, had arrived at the scene. Upon learning that the small plane was still on the tower, he immediately took a rope from the trunk and climbed up the tower. In order to bring the small plane back for further research, he quietly slipped the rope around it. But as soon as he had secured the other end, the small plane suddenly began to struggle. Seeing this, Mike threw the rope at the small plane again, but this time it struggled even more fiercely. Left with no choice, Mike had to grab the rope with his hands. Unexpectedly, the strength of this small plane was astonishing. Very quickly, his gloves began to emit thick smoke from the friction, and his palms were scorched and painful. Because of this, he had no choice but to let go of the rope and allow the small plane to break free from its restraints. Before Mary could even react, the small plane flew straight back to her side. Only then did Mary realize the small plane's intentions. She hurriedly put it in the trunk and immediately drove away from the place. After experiencing so many events, the boy also realized that everything was because of the small plane. Not wanting to continue causing trouble for his family, he took advantage of the quiet night and buried the small plane in the sand.